Hi, Shaneen. It's so good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just, coping with our lockdown here in the UK.
I know. Who would have thought? 2021, I think everyone thought it was going to go away, but it's still here.
And we're all living the Zoomed perfect life, right?
We are living the Zoom life, and it's a good life. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. I've been really looking forward to this. I know we've got some really cool things to uncover. But before we start, I just wanted, for anyone who doesn't know you, who hasn't met you yet, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do from a, normal life? I know life isn't normal at the moment for anybody, but if it was normal, what would you be doing? Your 9 to 5, Monday to Friday?
Well, I'm a mother and a wife, and what do? I used to travel so much, I've been traveling across the world speaking and engaged with all sorts of cultures. But right now in lockdown, I am just loving being a mum. I'm loving being a wife. And I have to be honest, yes, there are moments, Joanna, where you just think, oh, you've had enough. But, being born and brought up in the busy, hectic mayhem of London life, I've actually discovered something really cool, the country life.
Oh,
I've actually become a country bumpkin in lockdown.
Love that. I love that. I actually grew up in the country as well. As we've done the opposite. I grew up in the country and I live in London, but I still consider myself, I'm a country mouse at heart. I really am. I'm not a town mouse. Not that I get to go anywhere at the moment.
So that's what I do. In my spare time during lockdown, I just go out for lovely nature walks, and I find them very reflective and therapeutic. But outside of that, I usually travel speaking at universities, schools, conferences, and I'm living the really Zoomed life. I feel, my goodness, this pandemic's really taught us new lessons in life. So, yeah, it's really quite strange. Some days you get up and you think, oh, I can't believe I'm actually living this. But we are. And this sudden sort of global pause that's come upon all of us has changed our lives quite dramatically, in so many ways. So
it really has. And I've got another question for you. Us getting to know you a little bit more. Now we are in lockdown. So I want to know, other than your walks, what's your favourite lockdown activity? What do you love to do?
Oh, I love so many things. But one of the things I love being slowly cooking, being present. Actually, when I'm cooking, I'm really slow. I enjoy it. I'm engaged with the smells and the activity of cooking. And that is really taught me a lesson, being present while cooking, because normally I sort of slapdash, run off, get a coffee. And now I'm actually smelling the onion, smelling the tomato. So that's been one of my favorite activities, is cooking for the family and doing it really slowly.
Nice. I like that. Slow cooking. But you are the slow cooker.
Yeah, definitely engaged in cooking.
Brilliant. That's awesome. Well, now, really exciting stuff, because your book, brand new book, The Lord of the Silence, just been launched. We can't wait. We really want to know, what's it about? What is it about? Tell us.
Well, here it is, the soft cover of The Lord of the Silence. I know Joanna's got the ebook.
I do.
Well, this book is really about, and it's for those readers that are looking to get away from the hurry and the harangue of the 21st century busy life. So it takes the reader into a quiet place of captivating silence and solitude in the busyness of our desert lives right now. And the book is really about teaching and cultivating the art of being still in our busy world.
And that is something that's so key to right now, because I think before this whole pandemic hit, we were all, well, I don't speak for myself, but I know a lot of other people felt like we were all running around so busy. And this almost forced us to be still for a moment and to stop. So I'm really curious to know what it was that inspired you to write this book.
Well, it's been quite a journey. A really good question. I mean, lots of people, I spoke at some universities about silence in the US, and people around me said, oh, you really need to write about this subject of being still and cultivating silence. And the journey really began in London. It's not all about London, but because I lived in that mayhem of living in the centre of London, the pinging, the dinging, the banter, the chatter, the clatter of everyday life, silence almost became like a commodity. It was a commodity. How can you just be still? I mean, the buses, the people, the constant, walking in London, Joanna, and you probably know this, people were constantly literally on their phones like this. And I'd say, excuse me, they'll bump into you and heads down, totally engaged on their phones. So the journey began out of that mayhem and always being in a hurry. I was always in a hurry, actually. I'd just walk across the road in London and I'd just be hurrying. And then one day I said, why am I always in a hurry? I'm always rushing to one place to another. And I remember once going to St. John's Wood to meet a friend for sort of a prayer up. And suddenly I was dashing to her house and I heard this voice, kind of a whisper, say, why are you in a hurry? I'm never in a hurry. I heard it again. It says, I'm never in a hurry. And it was that sort of gentle whisper that said, I'm not in a hurry. And it was like the whisper, I would call it, some people might say, oh, it's the inner voice. But for me, it was just the Holy Spirit speak to me and say, I'm not in a hurry. And it was from then on, I realized hurry is a sickness. Hurry is a virus itself. And when I learned to allow myself to be still and silent, I started to cultivate this sort of practice in my life. And I learned so much through it. And this journey over the years, I researched silences throughout history, how silences worked positively, negatively. The practice and the art of silence were missed. And I would engage with friends in London who'd say, I'm doing yoga to get my sort of quiet moment in, or mindfulness or philosophy or yoga, so many different practices. And so I studied all those practices that people were engaged with. So the book really does touch a lot of historical points in silence, along with my personal journey, and certainly research the culture of today, how we're addicted to our phone. I mean, we have 23 million emails sent per minute. Over 20% of our over 7 billion population is addicted to Facebook. And, there's this wonderful place I'm wanting to research this, and it's in my book where it talks about people seeking different ways to relax and reduce stress, to chill out. And the media culture is seeking to tailor-make our lives around social media with various stylish gadgets. As you know, there's always a new gadget to buy. People want to keep each other at a distance so they can be in control. We are becoming increasingly used to being alone in a together but not together world. And more is the preference to text and not talk, tweet and not meet. We expect more from technology than people we link with. We are lonely but afraid of intimacy with people, though in the moment of being still, there arises within us a sense of panic. And I think this modern dichotomy of getting calmed by a tweet or going on Facebook is actually causing such an angst in our society. And my book and my journey is really to take the reader on discovering being still again, learning to be silent. And yes, it's weird because, Joanna, I remember the first day we had lockdown last year in March, and I went out on my street and it was just deathly weird, spooky silence. And there is that side to silence, but there's a side to silence that is so liberating and freeing and worth practicing. So my book takes you on that journey. And I've been on that journey for a while. And I wrote this book during the pandemic. So the book does highlight so much of what my life was like during the global pandemic, and which is on the lips of everyone. And it deals a lot with the quick, fast culture, the Amazon Prime. We want it the next morning. And I think sometimes we kind of take that into our spiritual lives. We expect God to be Amazon Prime, say a quick prayer. It should be at the door. Post in the morning, hey, God's answered prayer. But this book takes you on that journey of discovering the quality of being still.
That's incredible. I really, really love that. And I think it's so current, isn't it, for us right now? And I always feel with silence, everything becomes heightened and more, if God wants to speak to you, if there's a pause and a silence and a space for that, when you hear it, it's even louder, isn't it? Because it comes out of that silence. And I'm just so excited for what's going to happen when people read this. But you said that you wrote this during the pandemic, but when did it start? Has it been a long process, or is it something that dropped, like a little download during this pandemic time, or is it something you've been thinking of for years, or is it a newer thing?
I've been thinking about it for years. So it's not a journey just during this, COVID-19 period. It's really a journey of many years of experience in silence. And, books are so powerful. I mean, at the age of 14, I was very impacted by a book that became a mentor in my life by a woman called Catherine Coleman. She's American, very strange looking, red hair, freckles. Not that anything's wrong with red hair and freckles, but she was weird. If you go on Google, you'll think, oh. So when I first discovered how she spoke and looked like, I was thinking, oh my goodness, she's so strange. But a book came into my hands and it changed my life. So I know the power of books. And the reason I bring that book up is because it impacted me so much. And there's a couple of pages in there where this woman, she was known as a healer. People call her a healer, but she wasn't really a healer. She didn't heal people. She just healed them through the name of Jesus. Okay. Some people find that name very foreign or whatever, but he still heals today. And that kind of fascinated me that she was a woman. Two, she was weird and odd and never fit in. And God used this woman very powerfully across the world, particularly in America. Tens of thousands of people used to gather 24 hours before the meeting started to get into her meetings. I'm sharing this story because in her book, she's got 15,000 people in this stadium. And suddenly everyone's waiting and anticipating this woman's coming on and she's going to pray for my son or my husband or whatever for me and I'm going to get healed and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly she just comes on and stops the meeting. And she says, stop. And everyone's like, what? Time of the month or what? Hello. And she has this sudden silent pause in this meeting with 15,000 people. And this pause lasted a good 2 to 3 minutes. And she said, I cannot continue the meeting. So she says, I want a pin drop silence. And silence. And then she says, there's somebody here in this meeting that's grieving the presence of God, the Holy Spirit. Some people might find that term strange, but he's the real deal, the Holy Spirit. And she goes, I cannot continue until we find out who this person is. Sounds strange, but she said, there's somebody on the row here who's been healed and they're not receiving the healing. Anyway, this woman sort of popped up and said, who she worked with called Maggie. She went round and she went to that row and she said, excuse me, something's going on with you. And this person was sort of sweating and shivering and feeling some sort of heat. Anyway, that person was totally healed from eczema, I believe it was. And so that story kind of took me on a journey. So the journey's always been there in my life from my teens, but it didn't really, you said the word process. So the process are daily decisions that we take in our lives. And my decision started in my teens of cultivating silence early. I can't believe I'm sharing this part, but I will. So nothing like transparency, is there really? I used to get up at 4:00 in the morning to spend time quiet with the Lord before I went to school. And those early days kind of actually did prep me for this book. But as I moved more and more into the fast pace of rich media life, I kind of lost that journey on the way and I became this very hurried person, always on the go, tick boxing, what next, waiting for what's next and not enjoying the presence. So along that journey, this book was birthed and the process has been many, many years. And I don't think you can do knockout books, of course, but this is a real heartfelt journey over the years. And it really popped out of my life during the COVID period because it's more relevant now than ever. I talk so much about the silent minute at Churchill when England had a blitz and a threat from Germany, and Churchill was supported Lord Wesleyan at the time and Parliament, and King George supported a silent minute in Britain. The whole nation of England came together to overturn this threat, this blitz in England. And that silent minute brought the whole nation together to pray for the common good of man, and they overturned the threat in this nation. And do you know what, Joanna? Years later, this general army of the German army came up to one of the generals in the UK and said, I never quite understood why Britain won the war there, the Blitz. And he said, but it had something to do with a silent minute when the Big Ben rang at 9 p.m. every night. And we had no counterfeit for that. So there's many accounts of historical moments where people came in silence in the book. But for me, it's my personal journey. And I'm absolutely fascinated by silence because it connects you to the high power and connects you to all the issues in your life that you're running away from sometimes, in denial. And it's the moment where you can hear that gentle whisper that you're waiting for, that direction or a business download or an inspiration. And most of my inspirations have really come out sometimes in silence. But most of all, the process has been this. You don't have to go away for a weekend just to be quiet. You don't have to be like a monk, like the desert monks. You can practice silence in everyday life, cooking, cleaning, with the children, in the car. So silence is very practical.
Now, you talked about the power, really, of silence in that analogy of what happened in the war. And I think that right now, lots of people are experiencing, because of this pandemic, a lack of peace in their lives because things have been upturned. It's uncertain. Nobody really knows what's ahead. Things might have been completely turned on their head last year, and we don't even know what next year's going to look like. There's no answers yet. So lots of people are experiencing this lack of peace. And you talk in your book a little bit about how the presence of silence and the practice of that can actually give you peace and lead to peace. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think panic, peace versus panic. And this is the time when most people are losing jobs, marriages, to uncertainty of the future. And we're all affected by this on a personal level, professional level, economic level. And yes, peace. So people look for peace in all sorts of ways. And the peace I'm talking about is a abiding peace. It's a eternal peace. It's a peace that sort of surpasses man's comprehension. They don't know where this comes from often. But for me, they're looking for it. That's what I mean. But biblically, scripture talks about it. King David's really quite a known dude. He's experienced many battles in life, had lots of panics, losses, defeats, and some people call him bipolar, some people call him depressed, they call him all sorts, but he's very expressive. And he said, "Be still and know that I am God," in Psalm 46:10. And that's a great place to start, is that the ancient writings that the world talks about, get mindful, get still, do a bit of Buddhism or whatever. These people are all searching to be still and engaged with a higher power. But David knew back in the day when the prophet Isaiah in 700 BC prophesied that a Prince of Peace will be born. And many years later, this prince gets born and his name's Jesus. And I know in the UK, Jesus' name's a bit familiar, it's Christian nation. People see him a little bit of as Western God or whatever. But, this Jesus was kind of talked about way back in the day in ancient history and times. And the prophet later, didn't see Jesus, he prophesied it. But we see that hundreds of years later, this peace, that Prince of Peace that was born, Jesus, the celebration that we have at Christmas globally, is talked about in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. And it says, "Do not be anxious." We're all panicking right now. And how can you tell someone not to be anxious? It's so difficult not to be, right? But here there's a possibility and there is a choice. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, let your requests be known to God. This is the key. That the peace of God will guard your heart and your mind through Christ Jesus. So the word surpasses mean man doesn't have the ability to understand. How can you have peace in the middle of this global pandemic or in the middle of your personal crisis? It may have nothing to do with the global virus. It may just be an internal virus of resentment, unforgiveness. It may be a virus of hurriedness, busyness, addicted to people, or it could be anything. And some of us have this internal virus that we're dealing with ourselves. And I know I had that, and it was certainly hurry and many other issues I had to deal with. And I've learned the Prince of Peace that the prophet Isaiah was talking about gives you that peace that you can really have during this time. It's a peace that man's ability doesn't even understand it, but it sets your mind and your heart at peace, and it helps you to come to a place of being still and engaging with the Prince of Peace, to cultivate that peace daily as a mother, as a father, as a leader. If you're a leader out there and you're struggling to lead the people, I don't know, conferences, churches, whatever you do, this peace is so unusual, and so unusual because it's abiding, it's eternal. It's not just to do with the mind and the heart, but it's to do with the spirit. And that's what I love about the peace of God. And that peace anyone can have who's listening right now.
I love that. Now, Shaneen, I know there's people who've read this book already and whose lives have been changed. You've had testimonies of great things that have happened. Is there anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I think, I talked about peace. John 14:27 says, Jesus said, I give you the peace that the world cannot give. So if people are kind of searching for peace and they're looking out there everywhere and they're thinking, oh, religion's boring, I totally get you. Religion is boring. It's so boring. But a relationship isn't. And this piece I'm talking about, and the book really highlights the Lord of the Silence, is about peace. It's the testimonies I've heard so far from people that have written to me. Actually, just last week, I received a lovely text from a woman in the UK who said she read the book and she said, I can't put it down. She goes, it's really helped me to understand the power of being still, the power of the art of that's been lost, of solitude and pausing by choice. So testimonies have come through. I'd love more testimonies, more of you out there who's listening and who haven't grabbed my book, do grab it, because it's really relevant for today's culture, and it really does deal with the panic of life. There's a chapter devoted to peace in panic in here, and it really does touch a lot of subjects and issues in our own personal lives. But Joanna, while I was writing this book, for me, on a personal note, 2020 for me was such a powerful year. I saw heaven kiss earth. For me, I went through a terrible time in the past few years prior to COVID, and I had my own virus going on. And 18 years ago, I planted a seed, and the last chapter of this book talks about restoration. And I want to highlight this in the interview because so many people have lost so much money, jobs, reputations, maybe their own health, loved ones right now. And I know what it feels like because I've been through my own personal losses. And the last chapter of this book talks about how do you recover? How do you get restoration again in your life where you've lost so much and there's no hope, where you feel helpless, hopeless, and hurt. And I felt that. And 2020 for me was a year of my turnaround. It was a year of my breakthrough. It's where I saw God do exceedingly and abundantly above and beyond what I could think or imagine. Now, most people read that and think, yeah, big deal. Yeah, I haven't experienced it. Well, I did. And my book really highlights the power of restoration, whether it's a marriage, whether it's your job, whether it's your finances, your health. He can do it. He did it for me. My other book that's coming out is on restoration. The power of God restoring one's broken life. I lost my reputation. I lost money. I lost business. I have lost so much. And in my next book, I'm going to talk about my losses and how God restored them through one seed that was planted 18 years ago. And that seed popped up in 2020.
Wow.
And you don't know what you're going to plant in your life and when it comes back. But God, the God I'm talking about, is a God of relationship. It's not about religion.
Yeah.
It's all about a relationship with him. And this book takes you on a journey with the Lord of the Silence. But it certainly will highlight the power of stillness and what you can do with it. George Washington Carver was an African-American man, and he's the founder of peanut butter. And it was in his laboratory one day in America that he cultivated stillness and silence. He didn't know what to do with his life, all sorts of directions. And Suddenly, in a still quiet moment, an idea dropped in his heart. Peanut butter. I mean, peanut. I mean, what do you do with a peanut? He heard a voice that said, butter, peanut butter. And it's in that silence, suddenly, a business idea pops up, an idea for a book, an art, a song, a TV, a movie, whatever. But it's in those moments, suddenly you get engaged with your true self and you're honest with yourself. And if you are running away, I know I'm going on a bit, if you are running away from issues, deal with them, because I'm a firm believer of what you confront will die and what you tolerate will dominate. And my first book, Dare to Be Great, really addresses how to dare. So I'm a bit of a darer, and I've dared to write this book during lockdown. So
this book, obviously, it's The Lord of the Silence. It's very much based and rooted in the Christian faith. But is this for anyone? Can anyone access this and read it and get something out of it?
Yeah, this book is definitely rooted in the faith. Yes, Christianity, but it's relevant to all people, all walks of life, whatever you believe, because it's really cultivating the heart of the matter, which is what we're facing, panic in our society today. So if you're really dealing with panic, depression, or finding a way of escape and you don't know how, it gives you practical tips of how to engage with the Lord of the Silence. But also it gives you such inspirational stories of people who, in historical terms, engaged in silence, from this French woman who was a part of the royal family, how she was known, got engaged in silence. There's the astronauts in space I talk about, right down to Churchill, to many other stories. Even the artist, Van Gogh is in my book. Mm-hmm. And these people all knew about the art of silence, a lost commodity in our generation. So definitely it's applicable, available, and practical for all those people out there who think faith is a bit wacky, weird. It's even for you. Atheists, it's for you too. You've got to read it if you're an atheist, because you know what? It's got some really good historical facts in there that I think you guys might just like to explore.
I was also going to say, if you could give just people out there just one final encouragement. You said something really, beautiful there about confronting the things in our lives, not running away from them. So if you could just give a piece of encouragement about why we should go on this journey, why we should read this book, why we should bother, what would you say?
Well, silence is like medicine. And if you are hurting right now and you have wounds in your life that you've never dealt with, they will dominate your life. And yes, we're on a journey of a process. We're all on a journey. I'm on a journey. I'm still on a journey. You're never perfect. But the key to real freedom is to deal with those hidden issues in your life. And how do you do that? Well, one of the ways you can do that is so simple. Is sit still, be quiet, be honest. Think about what's really going on in your life, because so often in busyness, we're addicted to the busyness. It's a badge of honor. And that sometimes keeps us away from dealing with ourselves. And I talk about that in the book. So number one, sit still, be quiet, be honest, get the book out, a journal, and begin to write what's coming to your heart. It could be forgiveness. You need to forgive someone. It could be simply from childhood, you've got something that dominates you and you haven't confronted. And as you do that, write them down and then begin to reflect and think, where are those, those issues rooted in? Yeah. And then name your emotion. Never be afraid of emotion. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay if you feel upset. Nothing wrong. They're all God-given emotions. But name them. Write them down. I feel angry. I'm my father, my mother, whatever, put them all down. And then finally get to that place of deciding, I'm going to release this and I'm going to forgive. And I'm going to let go. That's a simple way. And then after that, start cultivating the practice and the process of silence. And you'll find along the journey, there's loads of issues you've got that you haven't dealt with. And, they become easier to deal with. And I found, Joanna, what you confront will die. A lot of people don't confront. And therefore, they're dominated by their past. And to truly be set free, let's face it, the past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. So we need to use it as a reference point, but we don't need to live there. So deal with them, and silence helps you do that. Remember, silence is an invitation, not an obligation, not like the old monks used to use it, back in the day, the old desert fathers. It's a relational. It's something that is an invitation to you to go on that journey and become empowered by the Lord of the Silence.